In this video, we're flying drones. Flying this drone. This little contraption is the latest in the HoverAir line. This is the HoverAir Pro Max, the latest rendition of this thing, which you may have seen on the channel a while back, the original HovoerAir X1. When I got this thing, I was almost prepared to be unimpressed, and I actually was really impressed. So when this thing came out, I got excited. Now, full disclosure, this was all sent to me by HoverAir to do a video. However, they are not telling me what to say. And at the end of this video, I'm going to be going over all the pros and cons and any little glitches that I ran into with this thing along the way. And you really need to watch that before you spend your hard-earned money on this drone. Now I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what makes this thing different than the old original one. And to start with, I got accessories, a lot of accessories. So there's the drone itself. And then there's also this little gizmo. This is a new feature. This is a beacon. This allows it to follow you a little bit better, or it can follow you in a car, and it gives you a little bit of control over what's going on. You can then clip these to the beacon and turn it into a full-blown transmitter, which was not an option with the previous one. They got a lot of other stuff too, but it also comes with all sorts of different mounts, and even when you come in here, neutral density filters, which is very cool if you're skiing or doing action stuff. But what's more important than all this stuff is flying the thing. That's what you came here for. So let's get into flying the drone, then we'll go over all this stuff and the pros and cons. Let's go outside. So we took it out to one of my local hiking bouldering spots. My favorite place to go is closed right now, so we're gonna do it here instead. Now, what we're gonna do is we're first gonna fly this thing in a couple of the modes without the phone, without the beacon, without the remote, just it, flying autonomously. Then we'll do it with the phone so we can play around with some of the audio stuff, and finally we'll do the beacon and the remote control. So we'll start by just powering it up. You hold this button down, and you'll hear little fans kick on. Keen eyes will notice this thing. This is not part of the drone itself. I'm going to talk about that later in the pros and cons section at the end of the video.
Current mode, hover.
So hover's pretty basic. I would like to do something more
Zoom
like
out.
follow, because I want to see what this thing does in follow mode. I'm going to try to walk into some trees. And then to get it to lift off is really simple. What's nice also that with these is it doesn't use GPS, it doesn't have a long startup process. It uses optical flow sensing, which is basically just using cameras and it crunching data to know where it is. So you don't have to wait for satellites to sync up. You're pretty much ready to go.
Close. Follow.
And now it's going to follow me. So I'm going to grab the camera here, and I'm going to show you what it's filming. But what I'm curious about is straight up ahead, those trees. I'm going to walk into them. This thing is supposed to have obstacle avoidance, so it should pinch its way through this. Let's see what happens. Well, there you go. It ran itself straight into the tree, covered itself in dirt, and landed in the dirt. All right. Well, I guess we're not off to a great start now, are we? Okay, so let's try. It has a camera on the back of it, and then if it's in dolly track mode, it's supposed to avoid plowing into stuff in dolly track mode. So we're gonna try the same thing, going through that same hole, and see what happens. Okay, so now we're in dolly track mode, so I should be able to start it going in that direction, and it'll fly backwards to that same hole. I just noticed my lens here is completely covered in dust from that little mishap there. So we're gonna try it again, this time using the rearward facing camera, going backwards. Okay, so we are in dolly track mode now. This thing should be able to see where it's going, in theory. It didn't last time. Fortunately, right now it is low. You see right here, it's low. Okay, so flying backwards using the rear-facing camera there, it actually did see the tree and it stopped. But flying forwards, it ran straight into the tree. So now I'm going to actually change some of the settings, and this is something you could not do in the first generation of this drone. We're going to long hold the right press. And we're going to go to high. And now it should hold a higher altitude. We're going to walk around a little bit more with this thing and hopefully not plow it into a bunch of trees.
Middle. Dolly track.
Okay, so we got it in dolly track mode. We're just gonna go on a hike now. You can actually see it over my shoulder there, following us. Now, dolly track is supposed to be a little bit different than follow me. Dolly track is supposed to maintain kind of a heading. So anywhere you turn, it's supposed to kind of keep the camera pointed in that direction. And we're gonna see what it does down here in a second, because I'm gonna turn around. Let's see what it does. So we've come to a stop. The drone has come to a stop. You can see it's right there. Now we're gonna start walking towards it. And it is, it's keeping that same heading. You can see right there. It's keeping that same heading, and it's kind of moving around a little bit. Interesting. So now I'm gonna turn this way. Let's see what it does now. Because it should kind of go sideways. Now the downside to it going sideways is it has no sensors on the sides, so it in theory could plow right back into stuff. Now to bring it back into your hand, you just stop and it'll come back to you. Then just put your hand out and it lands in your hand. I'm gonna do the zoom out. What the zoom out is it's going to zoom out away from us, getting a shot of us, and I've set it to 30 feet, which is the furthest out setting. And with how we set it up here, it's gonna go out at a slight upward angle, out to 30 feet, and then it'll actually cut the file. So it's gonna give you two separate video files, one for the flight out, and then a separate video file for the flight back in. And then the next one we're gonna do is the bird eye. The bird eye goes straight up, taking a shot straight down. And something that's neat with this one is you can set how fast it rotates or no rotate. So if you wanted to go up and spin on the way up, I've set it to mid-spin 30 feet. So let's see how that looks. And it saves the footage on the drone the same way it did with the out and back, where it shoots one file going up, then it stops that file and it shoots a separate video file on the way back down. So there's a lot of different distance settings for the orbit, and I have it set at 5 foot, and that's because of that tree right behind us. I don't want it to fly into the tree. So let's give this a shot and see what happens. And paying attention to your surroundings is important because although we did demonstrate this has rear-facing obstacle avoidance, it does not have side-facing, which is what it would need while it was going in a circle. Now, something a lot of content creators might be into is the ability to audio record with your phone. With drones, it's really hard to get good audio, especially with all the propeller noise. What the app does, and it worked actually really well with the last version, so we'll see how it works with this one, it records your voice through your phone. Now, the downside is you do have to hold your phone up so it can record you, but it should be able to do it through an earbud. We're gonna try that. And then it combines it with the footage the phone shot, and then it filters out all of the propeller noise so it just gets you. So let's give that a shot, first using the phone and then using an earbud. So now we're in dolly track mode again, and we're using the sound recording through my phone. Now there's two different levels of noise reduction. Right now I have it on the regular. There is another higher level. I'm gonna land it in a second. We'll try it with the higher level because it's a little breezy and I don't know if it's picking that up as well. So let's land this thing, change it into the other mode and try that. Then we'll try the earbud. Okay, so now we're in the what they call extreme noise reduction. So that should reduce all of the propeller noise and also hopefully get some of the wind noise, because I might be picking up a little bit of wind noise right now through this. So now I'm doing the audio recording through my earbud here in my ear. Now I did really want to try using my little lapel mic that I use with my camera. However, I have an iPhone and I need the little lightning link connector, the dongle. Couldn't find my dongle. So now that I'm home editing, I realize how terrible the earbuds sounded. But I have a feeling that has to do with the Bluetooth, not the software itself. So I actually dug out, I couldn't find a dongle, but I found these guys. Remember these? The old headphones that had the lightning link? I found one of them and I tried it, and the audio sounds just fine. So it's an issue with Bluetooth and some of the delay with Bluetooth, which means if I can find my dongle, God, there's so many jokes there. If I could find my dongle, I can hook up my lav mic that I'm wearing here and have perfect audio. So you can do it, it'll be just fine. Just don't use your Bluetooth earbuds. Now, if you watched my video on the last version of this, you know that one of my complaints was that the manual controls, if you wanted to fly it manually, were terrible. But to be fair, it was not designed to be flown with manual control. It was designed to be autonomous. However, on V2, or this version, they fixed that with this and these things. It's a tiny remote control. Now this thing alone is a beacon, and I'm gonna play with the beacon last in this video. Right now I wanna play with the remote control. So what's pretty cool with this remote control is it comes in parts. You have the beacon, then you can clip it together and have a joystick remote, almost like a nunchuck, like the nunchucks from Nintendo. So now once they're paired together, this is pretty cool. You'll see manual control there, but up here, it'll actually show you the image of what the drone sees. Right now you're seeing my knee there, but it's a tiny, tiny screen. So now let's get this thing in the air using it in kind of nunchuck mode here. And I don't know if it's called nunchuck mode, it's just what it kind of reminds me of. So now it reads manual control on here. We're gonna hit the go button.
Manual control.
Now in manual control, how this thing works is there's a little button back here. You push the button down, and now if you push the thing forward, it'll come forward, backwards, it'll go backwards. The little joystick turns it left and right, and up and down. So now you can fly this thing with a single hand. Now the problem for me is that I'm not really a single hand kind of pilot, because I'm used to flying regular RC stuff. So I'm gonna bring it in here, and I'm gonna put the other side of the remote on. So now I can flip it this way, click these two together, these guys pop out, rotate, and now I've got a regular controller. Now I can actually put my phone in here too. I've flown with that. I honestly don't really bother because I haven't seen the need. My battery is a little low though. I'm gonna swap the battery out. Be right back. So we got a new battery and a 100% battery. Now we're gonna fly this thing like you would a traditional remote radio, whatever you wanna call it, controlled drone.
Manual control.
So from the remote here, I've already turned on recording. So let's get this thing out of here. Now I'm going to talk about it a little bit later in the pros and cons section of the video as well, but this remote actually has a really good feel to it. The gimbals on this thing are better than a lot of other gimbals that I've used on a lot of other drones, which really impressed me for something that's kind of like a pocket drone. Now something else I noticed was the responsiveness of the sticks. Now they are very responsive in that when you put input, the thing does immediately respond, but it does do very slow, gradual turns, which gives you more of a cinematographic word I can't pronounce, makes the turns look smooth. It doesn't look jerky, which is really nice because that's also been an issue that I've had with other drones. Now this thing does not have a sport mode, it's basically just in really more of a filming mode the entire time. Now something I just noticed, it was coming in towards that rock and it kind of picked itself up to go over the rock, which means it has some sort of obstacle avoidance, at least from the bottom, altitude hold or something. So now I want to see, what does this thing do if I try to fly it into something? And by something I mean me.
Low power.
Well, I guess we answered that question. It does not have obstacle avoidance pointing forward. Now you notice why I grabbed it and I flipped it over. That's if this thing gets into trouble, that's how you deactivate it quick, is you grab it and flip it over. It's got prop guards, you don't have to chop your fingers up. Just grab it, flip it over, it turns itself off. But it did have obstacle avoidance going backwards, so let me try to back it up into myself. All right, let's see what happens. This time it just ran away. But yeah, it apparently does not have any sort of obstacle avoidance in manual control, except for ground avoidance. Interesting. All right, so let's bring her in and land her, because we got one more thing to do.
Collision detected. Please pay attention to the surrounding environment and avoid obstacles.
Well, it's criticizing my flying ability, so that's nice. So, like I said, without these little contraptions on the side, it becomes a beacon, and the beacon is supposed to help follow. Now, on the last one, I did the follow me mode on my mountain bike. This thing is supposed to go a lot faster, so let's take out something a lot faster. Now, we could take out the motorcycle, but we just got this thing running, so we're gonna put it on the scooter. Now the beacon came with a little handlebar mount. It's a little silicone thing that straps around the handlebar and has a GoPro style cleat that attaches the beacon to the bike. Now I know this is a motor scooter, not a motorcycle, but it's no slouch. It's got a 150cc motor and it can do about 55. Now this drone is rated to 42 kilometers per hour or about 26 miles per hour, and we're gonna see how well that holds up here. The audio that you're hearing here is the audio from my GoPro that I'm wearing, not from the drone. Now, I did do a lot more driving than what I'm showing here. I just wanted to kind of showcase what this thing could do. I definitely did get this thing up to 36 back on some of the back roads around town, and it did some kind of tight turns and U-turns just like this to see how well it would track, and it actually had no problem. Even when I decelerated hard, the drone itself, like right when I was turning into that, had to slow down hard and really rock around, but the stabilization did a great job keeping me center frame the whole time. Now everything shot here is in follow me mode. I do want to try dolly track mode, but not on a road. This keeps it right behind me. I'm a little worried that in dolly track it may go across into oncoming traffic. Now, a comment that I got was how annoyingly loud these things were if you're on a hiking trail and somebody else is using one. And I'm not going to disagree, and I don't encourage anybody to use one of these things in a dense area and be obnoxious with your drone. What we're going to do now is I'm going to compare this one to the previous one to the equivalent of like a DJI Mavic to see exactly how loud they are. And we're going to do it as fair as we can with a decibel meter.
Continue. Hover.
So I've got it in the air right here, and I'm reading about 3 feet away from it. And we're coming in right around, it's varying. 75 decibels. I realized I had to stop talking. It kept picking me up over it. So 75 decibels. Let's land it and try out the previous gen. And this one I'm getting pretty much exactly the same, right around 75 decibels. This is a full-size Holy Stone drum. This is kind of your equivalent of a DJI Mavic. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna bring it up to a hover and check the volume. So this thing is also coming in right around 75 decibels, but you notice the actual sound of the props is a lot different. So we've flown 3, they've all come in right around the same noise level, although the pitch is different. These are a higher pitch than these guys, so this might come across a little bit more obnoxious to another hiker. All right, so we're back inside. So I got out there, we showed you the drone in flight in most of the flight modes. We got to play around with the transmitter and also with the beacon, and instead of doing the bicycle thing, we did the scooter thing. Figured I wanted to give it a little bit more of a speed run given that this thing is supposed to be a lot faster, and it proved to be. Let's talk about the pros and cons of this thing. I'm gonna start with the pros, then we're gonna move into the cons. So, pros. This thing is slick, just like their previous one. This is like the big brother. The previous one, I believe, had a 2K camera. I don't think it was 1080. This thing is 8K. Now, this video I'm uploading in 4K. I don't think YouTube supports 8K, but I don't edit in 8K. But I filmed everything in 4K on this thing, so that's awesome because it's basically at where we are and getting a little bit of ahead. The stabilization on this thing was excellent. I tried my best to show you how hard this thing was rocking and rolling around when I was shooting it, but it was really rocking and rolling around when it was chasing me on my scooter, and you couldn't see it because of the little gimbal on the front of this thing was taking care of all the stabilization on board. So it really did do a very good job with the stabilization. The beacon feature is sweet. I had to keep telling myself, you don't have to turn around while I was out riding the scooter. And I have had this thing out on my bike as well. When I would take this thing out, I was constantly turning around, making sure it was still there, because I didn't know if it was still there. With this thing, I've got a little screen on my handlebars. I can see that the drone's behind me. I can see we're all good, that I haven't lost the thing, it hasn't hit a tree. So this little gizmo, very cool. Now I also realize that these and these were not really meant to be flown with a controller, but this feature's slick. So at first I was kind of like, it's all clipped together, there's a bunch of parts, but what is nice about it is it means you don't have to carry everything if you know you're not gonna need it. Most of the time I'm never gonna need the sticks. I'm just gonna carry this thing. But when I do need to control it, I can stick these suckers on there. And I can honestly say these gimbals, even though they are so small, these gimbals feel really good. I'm an RC nerd, and gimbals are a thing in our crowd. Now, if you've done any sort of aerial photography or filming, or even filming on the ground, and you've done any sort of stuff in high light and action, you'll know the need for neutral density filters. This helps blur motion, and usually you'd say blur is bad, but blur is actually good when we're talking about video. because otherwise you get kind of a really jerky thing. This thing has clip-on neutral density filters. Look at these little guys, they're so cool. Now my drone is wearing sunglasses. It was honestly something I was a little bummed that the previous one didn't have, and actually one of my other quads that I have also isn't compatible with neutral density filters. So having something already ready to go, purpose-built for it, is very slick. This is one of those things, I don't think a lot of people are going to need them, but the people that will need them are going to appreciate that they exist and that they are compatible with this thing. The different autonomous flight settings are very similar to the previous one. They do seem to perform pretty much the same. However, what was really cool was on the previous one, there was no screen. You basically just chose the setting and you were off. If you wanted to change any of the things within each mode, you had to pull out your phone, do it in the app. So that is things like how far away from you want the thing flying, how high off the ground you want it flying, and things like that. With this, like I showed when we were out in the field, you can do everything from the drone. So now let's get into the cons. And I'm struggling with this one a little bit, mostly because this thing was sent out to me as a kind of pre-release product, and since I've gotten it, we've gotten 3 or 4 firmware updates that have addressed issues with it. So this is pre-launch. However, this thing is launching in a week, or shipping in a week, and this is where we're at. So I'm going to address the issues that I found today, and if things get corrected, I will put comments down in the pinned comment below. The first thing that we ran into, we'll kind of just go in order of things that I ran into with this. The first thing we ran into was obstacle avoidance. So when it was in one of the autonomous modes, as you saw, it plowed into a tree. Not good. And it even has a camera on the back for when it's flying backwards. It has a camera on the front for forwards, but it ran right into a tree. When we tried it again with other stuff flying backwards with the little camera on the back, it did fine. Now I also struggled with some of the audio settings, and for starters, when I was trying to record through my phone, and the way that works is it records the audio on your phone, it records the video on the aircraft. Then when you download the video from the aircraft to your phone, it combines the audio and the video files together, stitches them. Supposedly this thing, the beacon, can do the same thing. It has recording in it where it records audio to the beacon and then syncs it up with that once you've landed. I could not get that to work. It's grayed out as an option, so when you click it, it should go solid when it's functioning. I could not get that to go solid, so that was an issue. Now the good news is, all of that stuff is fixable with firmware updates. I do think that's going to be a great thing for bloggers, vloggers, YouTubers, even if you're just shooting on your family vacation, you want to hike down the trail and talk to the camera. It is pretty cool that you can do it. Just some tweaking that has to happen in the software. The final thing is remote ID, and this is probably not an issue for most of you that are watching this video, but it is an issue for me. Let me explain. In the good old US of A and a lot of other countries, they have regulations on remote ID and whether or not you have to have remote ID when you're flying a drone. Here, if you're under 250, so if you're 249 grams or under, you do not need remote ID. And this thing does not have remote ID because it is under 249 grams. However, if you are flying commercially, you do need to have remote ID no matter what the weight of your aircraft. And YouTubing is considered commercial flight. So I need to have this stupid thing velcroed to the back. I have to fly like that if I want to be in compliance with the FAA. I do have a video on these, so if you are flying aircraft that don't have RID and you're over 250 or you're flying commercially, I do have a video on this. This is the cheapest one I've found. It works great. It's lightweight. I just velcroed onto the back of this thing and off I go. Now, after going over all the pros and cons, I always like to give kind of my take on something and whether I would buy it. I'm never going to advise you to buy or not to buy something. That is your decision to make. It is your money. But where do I sit with this thing? This was very cool, but I would not consider this pro or even prosumer. This was kind of a hobbyist toy. Very cool though. I really liked it, and I did shoot some content with it. But this thing crosses the bridge into a prosumer type drone, my opinion. All the things that were lacking in that one, they took care of in this one. That thing, people complained about the resolution. This thing's 8K. That's 4K more than I edit with, so that's pretty wild. This thing can also film in high speed, it has different frame rates, a lot of stuff I haven't even had a chance to tinker with. A lot of folks also complained about the flight times. That thing was about a 10-minute flight time. On the Pro Max, I've been getting a 16 to 18-minute flight time, and that's with having to lift the remote ID. They've also sped up the charging speed. This thing is running off of a 65-watt power brick charging, and it charges up these batteries much faster than the last one. My personal gripe was the lack of a decent controller. They gave me joysticks. And along with that, a beacon. What's cool with the beacon, also, I think I mentioned this earlier, was that I have only hooked my phone up to it once because I haven't seen a need. This screen is all I really need. I just need to know what I'm shooting. I don't need to see every little pixel. They gave us a rear-facing camera for obstacle avoidance, and they improved the obstacle avoidance, although I still hit a tree with it. And myself. But there's still issues with it. The good news about those issues is they all seem to be software issues, not hardware issues, and they have already been pushing out updates. Full disclosure, when I got this thing, I could not get the beacon to connect, and they've pushed out a firmware update for the drone and the beacon and fixed everything. Apparently a couple people are having that issue. So they are pushing out updates to fix the glitches. And I'm hopeful that they will fix the couple more glitches that I found during my testing and make this thing perfect. Now I will have links to all of this stuff down below if you want to check it out for yourself. And when they get those things fixed, which I'm hoping they will, I will post an update down in the description below, in the description and in the pinned comment. So now's the point of the video where I ask you to do all that fun YouTuber stuff, and that would be hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and I ask you to hit the subscribe button because I do honest reviews. There's a lot of reviews I've already seen out there saying this thing is glorious, and they haven't addressed any of the issues. And I really question those reviews. Are they reviews or are they an advertisement? I only do reviews here. And leave me a comment down below if you have any questions about this thing, the old hover, drones in general, or if you have any ideas for the channel, because I also do like to do a lot of DIY stuff. But I hope you got something out of the video. I hope you learned something. And of course, thanks for watching.